Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Return to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series by Rob and Hobb. I'm Kayiu, here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to be finishing off Royal Assassin. I think it's chapters 27 or 28 through the end of the book. So normally that would be outside our 5-chapter range, but also the last 2 chapters of this book plus the epilogue are a few pages short, so it comes to about the same length. And yeah, we're not looking forward to this one at all. In fact, fun behind the scenes, we had a 20-minute rambling conversation before this.
Just to avoid talking about all of this.
Yeah.
Also, this is spoilers all because it's rereaders, so if you haven't read all of the books in the Realm of the Elderlings world, you might want to take a step back until you have, because we spoil everything, accidentally or on purpose.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay, so let's, well, the quicker we get into it, the quicker we can finish this, so let's do it. So, the first chapter is chapter 27, Conspiracy. And I think this was a good part to kind of start the chapter off on, because this is where the plans for that kind of shape the course of the rest of the book are laid out, which is Shrewd needs to leave the castle. He cannot go to the inlands, and then also Ketrican kind of is we need to do something as well, and kind of puts herself in the line of let me also do something with that. Yeah, so we can just get into our notes for this chapter.
By this point, has Regal already said that he's taking the queen and the king inland with him?
For sure.
Okay.
I think
so. They're we can't go with him; we'll die.
I'm pretty sure that he says it in chapter 26 or something. Because I'm pretty sure that Fitz knew this whole time and was like, "Oh my god, what are we gonna do?"
Yeah, I think it might have been chapter 25 when he's giving his whole villain monologue. Beast thing.
That makes sense.
I like that this chapter and this whole episode and section that we're reading starts off with the Pocked Man, because that's all the warning that we need for the rest of the book. It's going downhill from here.
Speaking of the Pocked Man, this rumor, the only other gossip that could compete with it was a rumor that a boy had seen the Pocked Man by the castle well. Shade is doing that on purpose, right? To try to cast doubt on Regal's.
He does it throughout the whole next book too, and he'll ride somewhere and pop up so that he can sway the masses, I think.
To cause
he really does. This is where we first see his flair for the dramatic. Yeah.
Drinking blood from the well. I love it.
And I love just I don't remember if it's the end of this chapter or the next one, but he's just oh yeah, we're gonna do this, and he's just cackling, and Fitz is I don't like the sound of that laugh. Hold on.
Even when he's causing the distraction, there are several moments where Fitz, with the blue candles, there are several moments where Fitz is a bit too dramatic, Shade.
Yes, and then Shade comes to whisk away the queen and Shrewd, and he's covered in ash, and he looks really scary, and the actual Pocked Man, no one was supposed to see you. Why are you still in character?
Right.
I feel that's just from walking through the very dirty walls, but that might just be
what if one of the candles backfired and it smoked up his whole face?
On brand.
Yeah. No kidding.
Speaking of the Pocked Man and Shade, his quote, he said, "A secret is only a secret as long as one man knows it." And I was like, oh my god, I really like that.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's you think about it and it's I mean, yes, obviously, but then it in this chapter specifically, like, because there's all this, like, there's this web of, like, everyone getting to know stuff, and Fitz is, like, like you pointed out, like, I didn't notice it, but, like, there's, like, this huge thing of, like, Fitz asking everyone in his life, like, just trust me, put your faith in me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like, in light of that, it's like, oh, man, okay. We can see that, like, this is not going to end well.
Well,
And it
actually,
doesn't, because, like, Rosemary, he doesn't even think about including Rosemary.
I was just gonna say that. I was thinking, like, there's so much trust going on between all of these people, and then Rosemary betrays everyone's trust. Like, nobody even thinks to, like, suspect her. And I think is it in this chapter or the next one? It might be the next one, or 29, where I think it's 29, where she, like, betrays their trust, and they finally realize that, like, they can't trust her, this child, who's really fucking bad.
Speaking of Rosemary, I know, like, Kettrigan has the whole defense of her in Tawny Man, where she's like, she's just a child and blah, 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 and I needed to be nice to her. But, like, that can only go so far to me, because when I was, like, 8, I knew that I would have known putting grease on the stairs to make a pregnant lady that was always nice to me fall would be bad.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and I think Fitz says that he was about her age, or, like, maybe younger than her or something, when Shade started to train him. So she's smart enough to know, like, she's smart enough to be as smart as Fitz was when he was being trained to be an assassin at 9.
right. It's like, there's a base level of knowing, like, listening to a secret and telling it, fine. I understand that. Like, if you're getting treats or whatever, and the prince is telling you it's okay, sure. But, like, at a base level of right and wrong, you would know that trying to make someone fall on, like, treacherous stairs is bad. So it's like,
Or you would think that, seeing how hurt she was and how, like, it could have hurt her even more, you would think that she would stop, and that would scare her and be like, oh, like, I maybe shouldn't be doing all the stuff that the prince is telling me to do.
right.
I mean, I would just imagine that Regal holds it over her. Like, she probably didn't know that it was intended for the queen. She sees how much it's hurting Kettrigan, and he's like, well, I mean, if you reveal anything, they'll know it's you. They'll hate you. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
and also just like, I feel like he probably starts off with a carrot and then just ends up with a stick, where he's like, yeah, I like, just like threaten. I feel like Regal's not outright threatening a child. So
Yeah.
That's true.
So, like, I get it. I get what you guys are saying, but I also think that, like, it probably wasn't just that she was like, la-di-da-di-da, whatever, the consequence of my actions. It sounded to me it was more like, by the time she realized the weight of what she was doing, or, like, it kind of, she was already in too deep, sort of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like I hadn't really thought about Regal threatening her with stuff. I just assumed that he was being, like, his charming self, but that definitely makes sense that he would be charming to a point, and then when she tried to have a conscience and, like, stop, that is when he turned on the threats.
Yeah.
I guess I feel a little bit bad for Rosemary now, but I'm still mad at her.
This has always been the funniest thing, because, like, I mean, I don't like Rosemary, but y'all are, like, out for blood.
I hate Rosemary.
Y'all are like, infanticide? Let's go. No.
I guess I understand that she's still a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll be less suspicious of her in Tawny Man now that I, like, have had you to be like, she's a kid. It's fine.
Yeah,
I
wish we
it'll
got
be
to see
better
more
now.
of her in Tawny Man. It feels like they're like, surprise, it's Rosemary, and then, like, they do nothing with her character, and I'm like, huh? Then why did we have this whole build up to, like, who is Shade's new apprentice?
They do more in It's in the Fool with her character. Like,
Fair,
she
fair.
shows up a lot more. Fitz never trusts her, though, and I'm on his side.
I
You
mean,
do one bad thing as a kid, and then Fitz shuns you for life. He's got a very strong grudge.
He really does.
Also, it's just like, Fitz having trust issues? No.
But for some reason, he's, like, so quick to forgive Starling. And
That's because he sleeps with Starling. That's probably why.
I think it's also because, like, with Starling, it's, like, insults and, like, I think that, like, it's sort of, like, it's a personal harm to him, and it was not, like, stuff to the people around him, I suppose. Well, like, I guess Starling goes after Hap, but, like, that I think he kind of registers that as more of, like, a him problem than a kingdom problem.
she puts Nettle at risk. She just, like, spills all of his secrets to everybody.
I mean, yeah, I think I don't like Starling either. I'm just trying to, like, think through, like, from his position why that might be.
I feel like I didn't mind her very much when I was reading the first time, but I'm probably not gonna enjoy her now.
I liked her until she told Shade and Kettricken everything, and then I was, like, really mad at her, and she's just, like, mean. She's, like, mean-spirited. So
Yeah.
she's my least favorite character in the whole thing, I think. Outside of the
They have picked Mello to come with them instead of her.
Yeah, of the good guy characters, she's my least favorite. Obviously, I hate, like, Kyle Haven more than her and all of those people.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think that, like, Starling to me is, like, one of my least favorite people in the series, but as a character, I think that she's, like, really fascinating, considering, like...
Oh, yeah.
Just, like, her, like, whole, like, motivation and, like, just the way that she, like, kind of, like, observe, like, her viewpoint on life and how she, like, uses that to justify the way she moves through life. It's, like, I don't know, like, she's absolutely an asshole to, like, Fitz and Hap and, like, all of that, but, like, without excusing that, I think you can see why she acts as she does, and that makes me, like, interested in her character. But that's for another book. Here, what did I have for this?
Starling who? She's not even in here.
Speaking of, I guess, female characters, Molly dumps Fitz in this chapter, and it's so obvious that she's pregnant. Like, so
I
obvious.
missed it. I completely missed it. I was with Fitz the whole time when I was reading. I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe she found someone else. Like, how could she do this to Fitz? And then now I'm like, oh my God, Fitz, you're so stupid.
Yeah, I did not pick up on that the first time. I'm like, what? And I was so mad because, like, Julia just, like, immediately after reading that, like, sent me a snap where it's like, yeah, you know, Fitz is so dumb. She's so obviously pregnant. I'm like, you know,
I might not.
Like, we're all a little dumb sometimes.
I knew that they had Nettle, like, before, so I knew they had a kid,
yeah.
so I picked up on it. But if I hadn't, maybe I wouldn't have. But
I also read this book in high school, so, like, I don't think pregnancy was something that I was thinking about all the time, and, like, the hints that were dropped by Patience, I just, like, skimmed past them, because I'm like, okay, like, whatever.
Right.
Like, this is fine, like, you're just talking about herbs and shit, whatever. And then I'm like, she's got another boyfriend, how could she do this to my boy?
I love Molly in this chapter, because when I was her age in this book, like, teenage, like, 17, 18... I would not have, like, had the balls to just fully call somebody on their shit like this. And she calls him on all his shit, and she's absolutely right. Like, she's a queen.
Yeah. And, like, the fact that she doesn't tell him, and then she just goes and, like, does it herself because she knows that she's the only one that she can depend on right now is, like, oof. Like, she is so...
The line where it's like, I'm a king's man. Well, I'm my own woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, she's right in that if Fitz had known I don't think he would have acted any differently.
Yeah.
He
It would
just
have just hurt him more, and he would have been like, "Oh, I'm
more
horrible."
agonized about it.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's one of those things where, like, I don't know. Because I feel like, on one hand, Fitz could just be like, oh my god, we need, like, he might just try to, like, include Molly in the plan to, like, get Shrewd and Kettricken out or whatever. But also, I feel like the idea of being a parent might have been enough to, like, snap Fitz out of some, I don't know. It just feels like such a big shift and a thing that, like, I think, again, as we know, is very much not in Fitz's mind. So I think it would have been a shock.
I think
think-
even if he hadn't like gone on his rampage, he would have ended up in the dungeons because he was there when Shrewd died. I think Regal was going to pin it on him no matter what the circumstances were.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's very much that could have been done differently that would have had a different outcome. Unless
I mean, leaving with Shade.
left with them. Yeah, right. I think that's like
I
the only
also think that he has way too much loyalty to Verity as like his uncle and his king to leave Kettricken stranded. Like that's his uncle's wife, and that's his like not his nephew or something, but that's his like uncle's baby. That's like the heir to the throne. I don't see him ditching them for his own kid.
Also,
Like I still think he would put the royal baby before his own.
I think if Fitz had gone with them, like the fact that Kettricken and goes off by herself kind of puts her out of Regal's mind in that he's like, there's no way she'll live. Like, I don't care. Whereas if Fitz had gone with her,
it would be all of his
he
public
would've-
enemies. Like,
yeah, I think that he would
on.
have made a concerted effort to go after them, which would have put her at more risk because he's so threatened.
He doesn't hold Burrich in higher regard / esteem.
Right.
Yeah, but Birch couldn't even go with them. Or are you saying Regal doesn't hold Birch in that regard?
Yeah, because, like, he knew of the plan, right, to escape. But, like, he doesn't really seem to ever think of... He doesn't, like, do anything to Burrich, right? Because, like, we know that Burrich just hangs out there. Which, I feel like if I was Regal and, like, I found out that, like, oh, these are the people involved in the plan, time to just... you get a treason?
Did he
But, like,
know for sure who was involved, though? I don't remember if it directly says, like, Birch's name in front of Rosemary. I think he knew, like, that something was going down, but I don't know if he knew specific key players, because he thought Patience was involved, and she's not.
Yeah.
I guess so, okay. I think I misremembered then, because I feel like it might be that, like, they talk about it at one point, but, like, they do it quietly in a way that Rosemary can't hear, and then they talk about the plan, like, louder at a different time. Yeah.
I think also maybe Regal probably thinks Burrich has lost everything already. Like, he's got no horses in his stable. He's going to be staying at Buckkeep. Like, he doesn't get to be brought to take care of the horses and trade for. Like, he's got nothing. So Regal's done all that he needs to with Burrich, and, like, he doesn't have to worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he writes...
And Burrich is, like, presenting himself as this drunk.
Right. What I was going to say was there was a part in this chapter that I thought was really touching as, like, someone that has grown up with pets. And it's like after Molly dumps him, he goes to Night Eyes, and it says, he acted on the strength of what I felt, not why. He simply came to me and sat beside me on the dirty floor. I could put my arm around him and lean my face against his ruff and sit. And it's like, when I was growing up, if I was ever sad, I would just kind of, like, sit on the floor and hug my dog. And they're like, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'll sit here. It's like, so, like, Night Eyes is just there for him.
And I love that after that, he's like, scratch my ears. I can't get inside. I cause welts. And he's just, like, gets scratched all over. It's so freaking cute.
Mm-hmm. In that same scene, it's like Fitz is thinking about, like, Fitz is taking this really healthy viewpoint where he's like, everyone else in my life loves someone else except you, Night Eyes, which like, but then he's like, he only loved me, and Night Eyes is like, yeah, that's true, I love you, and I'm like, ah. And then right after that, he's like, the only real difficulty I have is knowing that you will never trust that it is so, and I'm like, no. Even Night Eyes knows that Fitz has trust issues.
And like the fact that you can't feel the love radiating from your like wit bonded partner, like you got some problems, boy.
Mm.
It definitely started with his like abandonment from both his parents. And then it
Yes.
just spirals.
And then it's just worse with the way like Burrich treats him in Assassin's
Shade.
Apprentice, and the way Shade and Shrewd put him through that stupid test.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Fitz. Who let you have 3 disappointing father figures? Oh, I guess going back to the Molly thing, there's a line here which really frustrated me where it Fitz is like, but the truth had severed in an instant what my lies had held together for a year. What must I learn from that, I wondered. And I'm like, the wrong fucking lesson, apparently. Like,
He literally
oh
learns nothing.
my god.
Timing, Fitz. Timing. That's what you need to learn.
And
Yeah,
that
this entire end of the book is just
lying.
Fitz doing what he should have done at the wrong time and messing everything up as a result.
Yes.
I remember the first time I read this, I was so annoyed with him constantly lying. I was like, just tell her the fucking truth. Oh my god. Like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. It's kind of wild to see how perceptive Molly is, even when she only gets to see Fitz like every once in a while, because she said, I wanted us to share all our lives. You wish to keep me in a box separated from your life. Like, girl, that was exactly right. How?
That's why
She
I
can,
love
like,
She knows that he does something else, just not what. And so it's even more like, I feel like, apparent to her because it's like Fitz knows what he's doing and knows why he has to, like, she's just like, you're living your life and I know nothing about it. What's up with that?
Poor Molly, though. She's been through so much. She lost all her parents, and like she never really knew her mom. She lost her dad, and now she's going to be pregnant, and she's going to have to raise this baby all by herself. And you know, people are going to talk around her and say stuff, and then also she has to know that like Fitz like isn't coming to take care of them.
Well, and she like doesn't have enough money to live on her own prior to being pregnant. Like that's why she's a servant living in the keep. And now she can't have a baby in the keep because she'll be like ostracized. So it's like she doesn't
know
Wait, wasn't it that she would have enough money to live on her own? It's just that she's saving up to buy a chandlery, right?
I think she's trying to get hers back.
Mhm.
Well, she goes and stays at the keep because she has nothing.
Yeah.
And
Is it
it's
the
like,
keep?
oh, now you have hardly anything and you're pregnant and you don't know what you're going to do because everyone's going to know it's the bastard's baby.
The bastard's bastard.
Yeah.
Another thing, it's like earlier, like Fitz is so angry at the fool for like suggesting the possibility of it, but it's like he just refuses. Fitz has like this thing where he just refuses to think about things that would be inconvenient or like that he wouldn't like to happen. And he's just like,
He thinks he can will them away as long as he doesn't think about them, and that's not how life works.
Right.
Fitz, it's a miracle that Fitz bonded to a wolf instead of an ostrich, honestly.
I think the only reason he didn't was because they aren't, very common in the colder weather. If he went down to Jamelia or whatever, he probably would have gotten one there.
Yeah, like everyone's like teaching Fitz the wrong lessons, or like Fitz is taking the wrong lessons from everything. Where he's like, Fitz is like, how can I live with this? And Birch, like, frame one, like pulls out bottle. He's like, have you heard of alcoholism? Which honestly, the more I think about it, it's a miracle that like into Tawny Man and stuff, he doesn't have like more of an issue with like alcoholism, just from the way that like Birch like teaches him and the way that he like drinks at a young age.
I think his alcoholism is the skill.
Oh,
Pretty
for sure.
much.
That's what I was gonna say.
He's like, hold on, I can only have like
One addiction problem.
Yes.
Elfbark doesn't count. It's basically it's a corollary to the skill. Come on now. Oh yeah. Also, hashtag Fool Watch. Right in that same scene where he's talking about getting hella drunk. He's like, just now I am done with being wise. I would rather be a fool. And it's like, yeah, it's like the fool later says in Star Tawny Man, I have never been wise. And it's like, neither is Fitz. So
Yeah.
this whole thing about done with being wise, don't know what you mean about that. You've never started being wise. Okay, I think like the most like pointed or like the note that like stood out to me the most in this chapter was Lacey talking about like what will happen to them if they're found guilty of treason, which is like enough has been said and done in this room to put us all swinging from a tree for treason. Save for you, of course, Fitzchivalry. It would have to be poison for you. Those of royal blood are not allowed to swing. And I'm reading this and I'm like, hold on, wait. But then what ends up happening is he gets accused of like having the wit, which makes it okay for him to like hang. But in the end, he kills himself through poisoning, thus proving his own royal blood, kind of technically. And I was like, oh my god,
that's deep. I missed all of that. Dang.
Yeah, like that just hit me as I was reading that line. I'm like, oh my god, that's I don't know if that's intentional, but if so, that's a really cool like deep cut, and like it feels very pointed because that line. It feels like one of those things where it's like the type of information that should be self-evident in the world, but is being told so that the reader can understand it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's probably intentional. Robin Hobb is a genius.
Oh, for sure.
We would not be sitting here recording. What are we on now? Like
episode
our 40th hour of
yeah.
Of like talking about her books. If it wasn't for that.
Yeah, even before we started recording, we most of the time start talking about the books before we have anything going on. We're like, Robin Hobb, more books.
So to balance out the hashtag Fool Watch, we also had a Wolf Watch in this chapter where Fitz is like, my lips drew back from my teeth in something neither a smile nor a snarl. And I like this line particularly for like Wolf Watch because it shows that like this entire like ending part is like Fitz being like caught between his various obligations and wanting to escape from them. And I think that this shows like his in-betweenness of like, I want to be just free, but I'm caught in all these obligations. And he eventually does get to, for a brief time, let go of those obligations when he does become the wolf. And then, of course, life pulls him rudely back.
No, it's politics pulls him rudely back.
Is that what we're calling Birch now?
Well, Birch and Shade say that, like, we need you, like, everybody needs you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, Shade, I think Shade would pull him back just for the politics. Birch just loves him.
That's true. That's his son.
Ugh. I guess, speaking of, like, parent-child relationships, the last note I have for this chapter is, I'd forgotten this, and it made me really sad when Fitz just suddenly is reminded of, like, I remember Serene as a kid. Yeah, your mom had to give you like a black robe so that because you kept spilling ink on stuff, and it's just like, Hobb does this. Like, she did this with Cobb last book when there's like right as Fitz killed him, there's like that flashback to him as a child, and it's like it really humanizes these otherwise like almost caricature-ish villains. It reminds me. I don't know if either of you have watched Arcane on Netflix.
I started it, but I haven't finished. I'm like on the first episode.
Okay, I'm like 7 episodes in, but like because of like the time scale of that show, they do a really good job of like they do a very similar thing of like taking characters that you know and love as children in the first few episodes, and then kind of putting them in situations where you see how they've grown and changed through their trauma, but there's still that like little bit of the kid part of them that shines through. And I mean, we get like a first-person point of view for that for Fitz, but yeah, just in general.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess like I lied. That was not actually my last note. My last note is like I was surprised by the Fool being surprised about Patience and Burrage, because like that felt like a low-level secret, and I'm like, how do you know this? You know everything.
Secret. Yeah, even Molly knows.
The thing is that's so set in the past, and I think the Fool is so focused on the future that they can't see, like that they aren't looking to the connections and anything that was going on before maybe they even came to Buckkeep. And it's just kind of like the future taking care of the king. I also think that the Fool like hasn't been keeping up with as many of the secrets as they used to, just because they're so focused on like, I need to stay in the king's room so that I can like make sure that he's okay, because otherwise I'll be locked out.
Yeah,
both of those make a lot of sense. Yeah. Alternative theory: the Fitz is like, but wait, I thought, or not. The Fool is like, I thought you were gay for chivalry. What's going on here?
It was the threesome that confused him.
Burrage could be a bi-king.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think we like a little bit proved that in the last book or earlier in this one. Like, you can't change my mind about that.
Absolutely not. Okay, that was my last note for the chapter. Do you guys have anything else?
Nope.
No.
Okay, one step closer to torture.
Great.
And just like torture, this chapter's names also start with T. It's treasons and traitors. Which kind of continues the same momentum of the last chapter. The big event here is Duke Brondy kind of calls Fitz and is like, hey, will you be king? We will follow you instead of Regal. And Fitz has to diplomatically kind of stay out of that while also essentially being like, yeah, I'll do that, but not as king. I'll just do it as like steward, which is still enough of a treasonous move that it has shade hopping. And it's sort of like, even Fitz notes, it is a meaningful catalytic event that has implications for how the rest of the book goes down.
There's a wolf watch in this part when Brondy's like saying that they'll make their stand at Buckkeep with Fitz kind of at the helm. He says, here's where the wolves shall stand and fight.
He also says something, and Hobb refers to Brondy as like wolfish. It's like a wolfish grin, or like he says it wolfishly, and I'm like, he's a hawk. Why are you doing this? He's not a farseer.
I think what's cool about it is it's because he's like pledging his loyalty to Fitz, and that's why they're doing it.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, there's also, and they lay it on thick. There's also the line where it's like, what is it? The lean wolves fight the hardest, and then like Night Eyes chimes in and is like, "Oh, we are lean, brother."
Yeah. There was one, I don't know if it's in this chapter or if I just like remembered it from a million chapters ago, but at one point somebody calls the raiders the sea wolves.
Yeah, I think it's Bronte himself too, which was like
Is
weird
it
to
in
me.
this chapter then?
I think so.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm. It's like we're mixing our metaphors here. What's going on?
Yeah.
Or maybe it wasn't. I noticed this chapter. It might have been Verity. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was Bronte though.
Somebody said it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't have very many notes for this
I don't either.
chapter. I think I just read and was dreading, and I'm like, we're getting closer. I don't wanna.
I wish Fitz would have just killed Justin when he was outside his room.
Yeah.
It's so. Fitz waits to do everything till the last possible moment. He is.
Well,
And Shade even was like, we
yelled
could
at
have.
him for like acting without thinking or acting without permission, and then later is like, you probably should have killed Justin, and Fitz is like, come on,
You told me I
I
can't.
listened to your rules, and now you're telling me I shouldn't have listened to your rules. Like that would drive me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's such a parent thing to do.
Yeah,
Like, give
It
a
is.
rule and then be like, but here's an exception.
Mm-hmm.
But follow my rule.
The rule didn't count.
And that's like, come on, you're like 10, right? You should have the judgment to know these things by now. Come on.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I'm like, Fitz, take proactive action. Just like do things of your own volition, please. And Fitz is like, nah. The only things
And
I will do of my own volition are get drunk and make bad decisions, baby. It's like,
I don't
God.
blame him though, because anytime he has done something of his own volition,
He gets yelled
whole
at.
book, he gets yelled at. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Shade is definitely at fault for like being like, you're an assassin, you're a tool, blah blah blah. But it's like, yeah, it's just like frustrating, like on a meta level, where I'm like, if only Fitz was more proactive of a person, stuff would get done, and things could have changed. But yeah, if that was the case, then Fitz wouldn't be Fitz, and the entire timeline would be different.
Well, if Fitz just used his princely ways, he could have gotten things done a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also probably would have gotten killed a lot sooner because Regal would have seen him as like a real serious threat.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
A scene that like melted my heart here is when like Fitz calls Night Eyes and it's like, okay, here's the plan, and Night Eyes is like, okay, cool, but why don't you just like telepathy me this? We have mental connection, and then Fitz just hugs him, and I'm like, oh.
Fitz is so starved for affection, he needs to call his wolf out so that he can hug him. Like,
I think it's also because he's like, he's like, I'm probably not gonna see you again. I might die during all of this, and
yeah.
I love Night Eyes just gruffly being like, foolishness, dumb, don't have to do this. Also, hashtag full watch for that. There's also like two other hashtag full watch moments in this chapter where Bronte is like talking about all like the pocked man signs, and he's like, these are signs, Fitzgerald, we'd be fools to ignore them. And it's like, kind of, except they're not the signs that you should be looking for. The fool is looking for different sort of sign.
And these are signs that are being created by somebody. Like,
yeah.
it is doing 90% of the pocked man things.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Shade being like, we are fools if we do not use every weapon that comes to hand. which also sort of reminds me of how the Fool was starting to blackmail Fitz earlier, where it's like nothing is more important than the future. I think again, it's another thing which like makes me feel like, because like sometimes I feel like there's a parallel between the Fool and the Shade in like how much they have like their own vision of what the their like domain needs, except like for the Fool just has a much larger scope than Shade,
Yeah.
who's like really blindered.
Definitely. Speaking of the Fool, there is a line that made me think of him, or the Fool, when Fitz is like, what had Burge said a time ago? That I might not see her, but perhaps she might see me. Let her see then that I could act, that one man standing could make a difference. And I'm like, that reminds me so much of kind of the Fool's speech when they said, shouldn't every mother like raise their child and say, like, if I can raise this kid to do like good in the world or to treat someone nicely, like then I've changed the world. And like that is kind of, I don't know, Fitz like saying that.
Yeah, I think it's also a callback to like uh earlier. Molly was like, one man can't change the world, like why don't you just stay here with me, sort of thing. And like Fitz is like, I'll show her that like, yeah, I can do this. I am going to change the fate of the kingdom.
His name isn't Changer and Catalyst for nothing. Like, come on.
Stuff I didn't pick up on the first time, but that like really struck me here is there's a lot of evidence that no one is taking Regal as seriously, or slash they don't understand him even after all this. Where like Bronte talks about like he's gonna flee inland to hide behind his mother's bed. It's like, no, he's fleeing inland to consolidate power there. And Shade is like, yeah, you know, when the red ships stop his trade, he'll obviously have to care about them. And it's like, or he'll just not, and he'll just start exploiting the Six Duchies even more, and just cut off the coast. It's no one is affording Regal the respect, at least, or respect is kind of not the word, but you guys get what I mean, that he deserves.
Yeah, no one's
The
taking him
severity,
seriously
like
as a
the
threat.
seriousness.
Mhm.
Yeah. They
Except
think
for
he's just being kind of a teenager or like some stupid young kid, but he is very calculated. And Fitz does seem to be the only person that can see that. Aside from like the Fool and everything, but it's not like the Fool can get people to listen to them.
I think Burrich sees it too, but like Burrich has no sway.
Yeah. And Burge doesn't know, like, he doesn't even know Shade to help
Right.
back up Fitz's claims. Like, he's kind of
Right.
just out there on his own.
Did we lose Kayiu now?
No, I'm here. I'm just going to turn off my camera for a sec.
Okay.
Oh yeah, another note I had here, which was a welcome break from all of the doom and gloom, was Bronte's page being like, should I hold on to these cakes for you, sir? And like Fitz very seriously being like, you know, you might eat them for me and then go tell Cook Sarah how nice they were. And it's just like, oh, so cute. Like, I love the idea of ordering someone like, you have to eat these cakes.
Yes. Well,
Fitz is
and to
really
see how, like, skinny and scrawny the kid is because of how badly everything is going on in the coastal duchies, and, like, seeing that this kid is, like, way skinnier than he should be, like, I feel like that really touches Fitz's heart.
I noticed in this book in particular, he's super nice, like to Rosemary, like he tries to joke with her, and he's really nice to this page. And it's like, oh, he's so good with like kids and little kids. And then he is going to have one, but then he doesn't get to like raise her at all. And then by the time he gets to raise B, he's like wrecked by Molly's death, and B, like, doesn't know how to handle him, and he thinks that he hates him. So it's like sad that he never really gets that, like to be like a true father.
Yeah. He's also like basically 1,000,000 years old when B is born.
That's
So
true too, yeah.
like an old man. He's not even like
old.
a young chipper father.
And when he has Hap, he's partially forged, so he's not all like emotionally available, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Hap ends up having to take care of him more than the other way around, at least at the part where he's writing the notes for that are the series. Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, and I feel like right when Fitz starts becoming competent, Hap leaves. He's like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. He'll be a minstrel. But ultimately, he does have like a really big, happy family because he raises or helps raise all of Molly's sons that are like young enough.
Yeah.
And there's a part where like Prosper and Integrity mention like, I remember him washing you off in the stables after you got covered in like something. So like that he helped with the young princes too, like kind of being a grandfather figure. So it is nice that he gets this like family, even though it's brief.
put it mildly. Yeah.
Fitz can never have long moments of happiness. He gets tiny little snippets here and there that he can hold on to for the rest of his life, but like lengthy happiness, nah.
And when he does, often there's something missing. Like even when he has those like 20 years with Molly after Tawny Man, he doesn't have the Fool or Night Eyes.
I know.
So it's like
he can really only have one or the other. He can have both Night Eyes and the Fool, or he can have Molly, but he cannot have all three at once.
Can't have everything, right?
And that's kind of like Burrage. Burrage can have either patience or chivalry. He can't have both.
Or Fitz or Molly. He can't have both. It is fitting that like Burrage and Fitz are basically the same person. They're both like so bullheaded and so like stubborn and whatever, and like it does make sense that Molly would like be attracted to both of them when they basically have the same personality.
Oh, for sure.
And they're
and
both
she probably thinks that Burrage is so much more mature because he's older.
right.
In some ways he is, because he's like gone through the same thing again. In other ways he's just as bad as Fitz.
Well, he's also like giving up his entire whatever, not that he had that much left, but he's like devoting his entire life to Molly and her child. Like you would feel something towards somebody that is doing that for you.
Oh, definitely.
No regard to like themselves. They'll like sleep out in the barn when it's storming because they want to protect you and your kid. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
So torture and stuff. Are we ready to get back to the book that we've been trying to avoid this whole time?
I don't have any other notes for this chapter, so
I'm good to move on.
I'm not emotionally good to move on, but I know that like I don't have any more notes, so there's I can ramble on for this chapter.
Okay, so chapter 29, Escapes and Captures. And otherwise known as the chapter where all of this shit goes down. Shrewd at the last moment is like, actually, I will die in my bed. And the Fool and Fitz are like, fucking what? And then Shrewd does just that. And then in a horrible case of timing, Wallace walks in and is like, oh my god, you've killed him! Which, like, it would have been bad either way, but, like, that just like was not a particularly pretty scene.
Well, the
Yeah.
fool is like yelling that Fitz killed him too.
I know. You cannot yell that. You need to have some sort of sense.
Yeah. Discrepancy, please. Also, you're not
Oh,
right.
you mean discretion?
Oh, yeah. Discrepancy.
Yeah, so suddenly the well-made plan is starting to completely fall apart. Shade comes through, though, to help escort Ketrican and the Fool out of the castle. But Fitz decides to stay behind and kind of, in a death mission, take out Justin, Serene, and the killers of King Shrewd. Unfortunately, as part of this, he ends up running into the Great Hall, attracting a bunch of attention to himself and eventually getting captured.
You miss out the point where he stabs Justin about a dozen times in front of everybody.
No, I feel like that was implied.
I'm not so sure.
But yeah, and all of this is because he took Kara's seed, which makes him go a little loopy.
As I was reading this, I was thinking, like, I wonder how much differently everything would have gone down if Fitz had taken elf bark instead. Like, I'm sure he would have done things a little bit more stealthily, and he wouldn't have been cackling the entire time. He's, like, chasing after them.
Yeah, I love like he's like, I was laughing maniacally. In hindsight, it's kind of wild. Like, I love that he like, because usually we don't get like future Fitz coming through to like provide a take, but that was just like so crazy that he's like, look, okay, I know that wasn't me. I was just like, I was in a mood that day, okay?
He's, like, super giggly, and the fact that he whispers, "Surprise!" when he kills Serene, I laughed out
Absolutely
loud.
deranged.
So ridiculous. He, like, sneaks up real close. Surprise! Stop.
I think I know a lot of people are like really anti these movies or these books being made into like movies or shows, but I just would love another medium to consume them in, regardless
Same.
if it's done well or not. But I do think like this whole chapter would be so cool to watch as a movie. Like the part where he's describing that he's like stalking through the hallways, probably looking batshit crazy, like angry and like vengeful, and the hallway candles are flickering with blue light. Like it'd be so cool to see.
Oh my god. It would be so scary, and then have him, like, laughing along the way. Like, oh my god.
Like
I
the
would be
good guy turns into
terrified of him.
the bad guy for not the bad guy for a second, but like scary.
Yeah.
The vibe is scary in this chapter.
Yeah.
Have either of you guys like watch Euphoria? I watched like an episode or two on a friend's recommendation, and I think the director for that would do a great job of directing the scene because they're really good at doing incredibly like trippy or like just like unreal or surreal scenes, but without having it be the traditional thing of like, oh, it's a drug scene, so we're just gonna like
Oh, they, like,
blend.
hands over
Yeah.
and get the
Yeah,
squiggly lines.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like they'd be a really good fit, if anyone, to capture it. Yeah, also I go ahead. I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Okay. Back to like Shrewd dying. There's like when he's kind of dying, he asks Fitz to let him say goodbye to Verity. So they're skilling, and he says to Fitz, "Son of my son, blood of my blood, in my own way I have loved you." It's like that's the only time that Shrewd ever really acknowledges him in the familial sense. It, like, A, acknowledges him, and B, like, indicates that he cares in some capacity.
Yeah.
And, like, really all it does is confuse Fitz.
Yes.
What the
Which
fuck?
shows how much Shrewd fucked him up.
Yeah, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you saying this? It's like, it's your grandfather. That should be normal.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not too late to grow up straight again. Lift up your head. See beyond all this. You have a life, and you can have agency. And Fitz is like,
It's like, you're the one
what
who
if
told me
I
I
become
couldn't.
even more of a tool?
Yeah.
I'll be the perfect assassin for you, Grandpappy. Don't worry.
Yes.
Well, if I was Fitz, it would make me pissed off too, because I'd be like, I asked you if I could marry the woman that I love and have my own life, and you told me
Said no.
no. Yeah, go kill more forged ones for me. Like, this is all you're doing.
Yeah, Fitz would be angry here if he could understand what Shane was saying. What Shrewd
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah.
I think Shrewd did try and show that he cared for Fitz and, like, a little bit tried to explain it when he was saying, like, I want you to marry Celerity because of this. Like, I want to give you a title so that you can be part of the royal family for real, and, like, you'll have protection even once I'm gone. Like,
Yeah.
he
He
tried.
says, like, I want to do right by you, I think.
I
And
think
that's
that's
Yeah,
true.
but Fitz doesn't see it that way.
This is the first time he's saying directly, like, I
love you. You're my grandson.
yeah, blood of my blood, son of my son. Like,
literally on his deathbed.
yep.
Yeah. As he's, like, taking Fitz to get himself killed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even reach Verity, though.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a sad
Shrewd
part.
slips away before he can even say goodbye to Verity.
Oh.
There's some great imagery in this chapter. Like, the idea of, like, Shrewd is just, like, a bubble popping.
Yes.
And then right after that, the horrific image of, like, yeah, you know, when you turn over a thing and there's, like, leeches on it? To describe, like, Serene and Justin. And
Yeah.
it's like, mm-hmm.
Well, and then I think it's later in, like, a later chapter, but Verity says that makes sense. I wonder how long it had been going on, probably even before Galen died. It's like,
Definitely.
Crazy.
I would not doubt it.
right. I don't think they would have been able to do that without his tutelage.
Yeah. For
Mhm.
sure.
Oh yeah, and I like how the past two chapters are all about, okay, trust, trust, trust. And then the start of this chapter, the first thing that Fitz is like, oops, I guess I shouldn't have trusted the coastal dukes because now everyone knows of the plan. And it's like, you trusted one too many people one too many times.
He didn't really have an option but to trust him, though, because if he would have just been like, no, go fuck yourself, then he would have had the coastal dukes against him or feeling, like, threatened by him.
And he wouldn't be in on any of their plans either. So he wouldn't know what they were planning or what they were thinking about doing. He's got to kind of try and keep it open a little, like keep the door open for them a little bit so that they have hope. But
Yeah,
also,
I think
can't
saying something to the effect of like, I'll think about it, and then like running to Shade would
Yeah.
probably
help me.
Mhm.
Right.
Which ironically would probably be like one of the few times in the series where not acting on his own and going to talk to Shade would actually have been the right move.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of the coastal duchies and everything, as I was reading this, I was just like, I love Celerity. Like, even though we don't see her very much and like she just pops up every once in a while, I really, really like her. And I just wish that I could just split Fitz in two. So we've got like his royal princely Fitz, and then we've got like regular plain Jane Fitz, so that he could live both his lives and be happy with two women. Like, he could have Molly and Nettle and be the father that he was destined to be, but then he could also like become a noble and have that kind of power and sway and like charisma that we know that he's got with Celerity. Like, he would have had so much happiness in both of those lives, but he gets none of them.
Probably why he's Fitz chivalry, because he's like Fitz, the kind of base-born, average guy, mountain guy, and then chivalry, the princely, nobles, like, whatever, two versions of himself.
But even in this chapter, he says, "If I'd ever thought or dreamed of being a real prince instead of a bastard, I abandoned that dream that night. It was entirely too public a profession."
He still would have been so freaking good at it.
He would have been good at it, I think,
But he
but he definitely would have like been thought of it as more of like a job.
Yeah.
I think he would have found his happiness in spite of being a prince, not through being it, I think.
Yeah. He would have been such a whiner. Like he would have had to wear fancy clothes all the time.
Oh my god, he would hate it.
Okay. The first time he gets actual like tailored clothes, he's like, "Oh, the fool is inflicting like fashion on me," and I'm like, he gave you a nice blue shirt that fits you, for God's sake.
He's like, I'd rather wear my shirt that I've been wearing for 6 weeks that has somebody else's
burlap
blood.
sack of a shirt.
And he'll be like, "It's functional. It's like 0.5 of an inch thicker. Come on now." And it has pockets.
Cool.
Pockets. God.
But it's ugly. You look like a hobo, Fitz.
And you smell.
Fitz is incredibly hot but has zero drip. It's just basically just the entire theme. He has zero self-care. Okay, I will give Regal credit for one thing, and it's that he has like pretty good poise and quick thinking to just like boop the blue candles. Like, I feel like if I was in his position, I would just like ignore it or something else. But like that very nonchalant response felt like it revealed like I think like a depth of intelligence to Regal.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not revealed, because we already knew that he was deviously intelligent, but like I was impressed in the moment.
Yeah. I think he knew that like something was up, and he's like, I'm not gonna let this ruin my big day.
And by him like not really reacting to it beyond that, it helped not cause panic and like the rest of the people. Like
everyone else stayed calm because they saw that he was acting like everything's fine
it was
still.
No big deal. Right.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that in this chapter, like, Shade essentially, like, says goodbye to Fitz for good. And it's just like, yeah, like, leaves him for dead, essentially.
Yeah.
Like that hits. I can't imagine what Shade was feeling in that moment. Like, not being able to give a proper goodbye to Fitz.
I feel like he gave up a little bit too fast. Like, he didn't try to convince him hard enough, in my opinion. He's just like, you should go with them. And Fitz is like, no, I'm going to kill the people that he killed. And Shade's just like, okay, bye.
I think that Shade, like, kind of needed him to stay because he needed Fitz to enact some of the stuff that he did. Like, he needed Fitz to help be the assassin as Shrewd was being the, like, whisker away.
Yeah.
I think he was almost proud of him in that last moment where he's like, yeah, okay, this is what it means to be an assassin, to like give up your life for the good of the throne.
Yeah.
He does cause a significant distraction.
That's the damn truth.
That's an understatement, yeah.
Oh my god. I think that tiny little section where Fitz is like giggling and like killing is the like only lightness that we get at the end of this.
Yes.
And I love like
that's the last time I laughed.
Like we get like so many examples of like Robin Hobb being able to like write different perspective shifts in this book, but like that one is done so well because it feels really gradual. And one thing that I missed on the first read, which I noticed here, is like when Fitz is like just taking the carriage seat and he slips into a doorway to like get behind the guards and then run. He's like, it felt like it took ages for them to pass me, and that's like the drug already kicking in, like just that heightened perception, and it's just like, and then like just the way he gradually becomes like a little bit more manic, it's integrated in so well.
Yeah.
I am disappointed about one thing though. They say Hobb says like a fox I ran, and I'm like, you could have just dropped a wolf thing there. Come on now.
But
Wolf watch content.
But I do think that foxes it was better because like I feel like foxes are really light on their feet and they can like flit back and forth and be like sneaky and sly. So that's how Fitz needed to be. But if he was a wolf, he would have just gone pounding like center of the hall, just right down there.
It also shows how he's not himself.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I like that we do have a little bit of a fox watch though, because the vixen queen is leaving the castle and being replaced by her little foxish assassin.
Yeah.
And it's the Queen's Guard that eventually stands up for him, right? Versus Regal's Guard.
The Queen's Guard and like a little bit of Bucky's General Guard.
Yeah. Like some of the coastal soldiers.
Yeah. So basically everybody besides the inlanders.
It is nice that there's just like, it's not just like Fitz fully murders somebody in front of a bunch of people. And
they still are standing up for
all out battle. Yeah, because the guards aren't just going to let the inland guards take him. They're like, no, he's the good guy and he's our friend.
Blade literally like gets like a broken rib and a broken hand by like shielding Fitz's body with his own.
Right.
That shit always like even like the little characters they make feel super sad, where it's like the final line's like, Blade, you know I would not draw blade against you. I know that well, lad. And he just like bear tackles him. And then we see him again like 20 years later in Tawny Man, and it's like it's just like it's like such a deep cut. It's like, man.
Well, and it's like all of these people have either grown up with Fitz or seen him, like watched him grow and like had even a minor hand in like raising him or like taking care of him at one point. So like they all have such a strong connection to him because they see him and they know him because he's around so often. And I think that's also like partly Shade's fault, because when he used to send Fitz on these like little games to get him acquainted with everyone and to get people to see him so that he's like part of everyday life.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Well, fault, it ends up being a good thing, I feel like. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think Shade is the reason that it happened.
Oh, for sure. And also, I think Fitz is also, like, I think, more of a social person than he realizes, or, like, he gives himself credit for. I think he feels that because he is an introvert / a lonely person, he must not be good with people sometimes, but he's just naturally a very charming person.
So what I was saying before my Wi-Fi cut out was, I know that Fitz doesn't like the big party scenes and all of that stuff, but I think that he does enjoy like the one-on-one connections or like just hanging out in the guards room where he can like have all of that conversation around him and like float in and out when he wants to.
Yeah, I think because I heard that part, and then I was like, he's fine with being social. He just doesn't want to be a person of scrutiny.
Yeah,
actually.
He
values. I think at parties and stuff, because like they have all of these things where like you're up on the high seats because you're part of the royal family. Technically, he's like, no, do not perceive me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I think I had like one last note for the chapter. Oh wait, no, I didn't. Yeah, I guess in general, I felt like I was doing this chapter a disservice by like not having that much to talk about it. But like, how do you like describe or encompass everything that happens? And it's like it feels like it felt like kind of a losing battle for me.
Yeah, I think this chapter is one of those where it's just like shit goes down, and you can't really capture the vibe of it without reading it. Like, you just have to read it.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone who's listening has read it, so they can kind of like sympathize with us.
Mm-hmm. And if they haven't, brave.
Yeah, what are you doing if you haven't?
Why are you listening to this if you haven't even read the second book?
Okay.
You're
I definitely like listen to like book live streams for books I hadn't read just because I liked the vibe of the people. But also like this feels a little bit too far for that, you know?
Yeah.
This is way too far in. We're in the second book. Like, go back to the first book.
Mm-hmm.
At least start there.
And if you are just listening because you like us, thanks.
Yeah. Very thoughtful.
Right.
Oh boy. Okay. Are we ready to move on to the really fun chapters?
No.
Too bad, we're
Can
doing
we
it
not?
anyway. Chapter 30, Dungeons. So, not hard to imagine what happens in this chapter. Fitz, after his rampage, is locked up, and everyone is kind of like, what are we going to do with him? Regal, in kind of a masterstroke, accuses Fitz of being witted, and it comes down to the word of the coastal dukes and everyone else, versus what Regal is willing to do. And this is like a long, grueling chapter. Eventually, Regal ends up finding like lots of little traces that Fitz has left of being witted, like the girl who saw him at Neat Bay near the well, and basically
The bodies
just
of people that of the like
Yeah.
raiders that he fought
Yep. And the forged ones that he killed, like when he
with
fought
the little
for
girl.
that little girl. Yeah.
Yeah, and with that finally secured, Regal seals Fitz's death warrant one way or another.
Thank God for patience in this chapter, bringing Fitz some information, because, like, just like Fitz, as a reader, we're kind of left in the dark. The last thing we know is that, like, someone hits him in the head, and he passes out, and then he wakes up in the dungeon. So you're like, did his plan work? Did the Queen and the Fool get away? What, like, where is Birch? Where is Shade? Where is, like, you have no idea what's going on, and Patience comes in and gives like little breadcrumbs of information that she can give.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, you're like, okay, well, the queen is missing, so that's a good sign. And yeah, it's just like, and she gives him some apples, and that's nice.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me that this is the last time that Fitz talks to Patience. Like,
Oh shit.
I would like, I just like never clocked that because it doesn't feel like it, right? It doesn't feel like an
Yeah.
ending.
Right.
Oh God, like the last thing she ever says to him, "I will do what I can for you," and it's like, when has she ever done anything else?
Right.
Yeah. She's always done that.
Mm-hmm.
This chapter is no fun.
No, it's really not. It's also really nice of Brondy to give him his cloak. And that, like, the coastal duchies are doing what they can for him too. But there's only so much they can do, and they're even like basically extorting Regal to do it.
Yeah.
I love Brondy and his family. They're badass.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of wild that it seems like everybody in the Six Duchies, maybe besides the like inland duchies, kind of underestimates Regal. Like even the coastal duchies just think that he's like this guy who's like he just wants power, but like he wants power in his inland duchies. Like he doesn't care about the coastal duchies, but like they don't realize like how ruthless and like calculated he can be.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, oh, we made a deal with him, so he's gonna stick to his deal. And Fitz is just like,
When has he ever?
yeah, he'll
Fitz is
kill
like,
me.
I'm basically already fucking dead.
Right.
Yeah, you guys can just dig my grave for me because you killed my ass.
He does not care about your deal.
And it's hard to identify, in some cases, why they have that impression of Regal. And I think it's hard because, like, we never get to see what he's like at like these parties and all of that. We only get to see him when he's with Fitz, and he's at his most ruthless whenever he's talking to Fitz or interacting with Fitz. So
Well, I think you brought this up either earlier in this book or in the last book. You mentioned that like people see him as a mini Desire, and Desire was all bark no bite. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think they just don't. Don't take him seriously enough.
I think also, at least for this book, they probably don't get to see him in a position of power very often. And then when he does come into power, they don't really have time to look at him and like see him and observe him doing all that stuff because they are so focused on like taking care of their own duchy and making sure that their coasts are taken care of. So they don't have that much time to like take a critical eye to what he's doing.
Well, and as soon as he is in power, the first thing that he does is move everything inland, which looks really cowardly. So
Yeah.
they're like, oh, as soon as he's in power, he just immediately flees. So he's just
they don't realize it's just consolidating his power.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not running away from the Raiders. He's abandoning you to them.
Yeah.
They also don't know
you.
he's in bed with the Raiders, so.
Mm-hmm.
My only other note for this chapter was there's a part where Fitz is like dreaming and he keeps thinking that he hears Shade. And at first I thought maybe it was Shade talking to Night Eyes. Because I think he was dreaming about being with Night Eyes and Night Eyes just like not being able to understand what Shade was saying. But then he kind of wakes up and it seems more like Shade is trying to talk to him through the walls.
I didn't think it was a dream. I thought he just told the guards that he was dreaming to like cover up the fact that he's yelling at the fucking wall.
I think it started. He was sleeping and he thought it was a dream, and then he woke up and realized that like he could actually hear him.
Shade was frantic because Shade realized like, oh, Fitz's number is up. He's about to die or be tortured. We need to like get him out. Or like warn him.
I wonder if he was trying to tell him what Burrich ends up getting in to tell him.
Yeah.
That very, very possible because they were colluding at this point.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When Fitz is skilling erratically here, he like skills to Molly, and Molly says, "No, I won't think of you anymore." Like, it feels like when Fitz is skilled dreaming, he almost has more of like impression that he gets, because we know in the last book, Patience is like chivalry when she like feels his like skill dream touch. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I wonder when he's sleeping, like his wit can mix in with the skill, and they kind of feel his like
general presence.
Yeah. Speaking of the skill and Fitz skilling, we definitely, I think, get a little glimpse into where Verity is on his journey when Fitz skills to him, because he says that there's something plucking at Verity the way that Justin and Serene were plucking at Shrewd, and it's definitely got to be the skill road. So he's like pretty far on his journey, I feel. So soon he'll be carving his dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I did not even.
Which I never caught, but then like
assumed.
Yeah, I also like reread that section, and he talks about like this is the path I must follow. Which like when I read this before, I assumed he meant metaphorically, but he's literally talking about the skill road.
He knows exactly where he needs to go right now. He's being guided. That's all I've got for this one now.
Yeah, the most damning part of this chapter / the whole ending is that Hobb could have very easily just made it like Regal makes up a thing and then just uses that as pretext to kill Fitz. But the fact that it's all of Fitz's own mistakes catching up to him makes it like that much more painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like ultimately based on the rules in their country, it's not an unjustified death. Like morally it is, but if you're strictly going by like law, technically it's not.
And it's kind of reasonable.
Which makes it all the more like terrible.
And I guess the last note I had for this chapter is Rosemary Reveal. We finally find out that she is in fact the assassin.
I bet Shade was pissed when he found out. He's like, how could I have seen, like, completely missed this? It definitely hit his ego.
Of all the people that should have known, he should have known.
Absolutely, but he's too focused on Shrewd to even think about anything else.
Well, he might not have known how much Fitz and Kettricken were saying in front of her, too. Like, maybe if he had known, he would have been like, maybe don't say that in front of anybody, not even the little kid.
Mm-hmm. It's also like Shade has his own biases, right? Because like earlier he's like, Fitz, who do you think the assassin is? And Fitz is like Serene, because like obviously it isn't that. And then Shade immediately is like, it's probably some like rich man twirling his mustache. It's like, no, Shade, you also have to let go of your own preconceptions.
Mm-hmm. Assassins don't always have to be boys, Shade. And they don't have to be old or rich.
Mm-hmm. But Shade is like, but I'm old and rich, and I'm a great assassin.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next chapter, chapter 31, Torture.
No explanation needed. The title sums it up.
Yeah.
Continuing to speak about Shade, something he said stuck with me in this chapter and also made me wonder, like, where he heard this from, like, if he heard it. He says, so Fitz is recalling some of Shade's advice when he's, like, about to be tortured. And Shade says, you can hold out longer under torture if you focus on what you will say rather than what you won't. I've heard of men repeating the same phrase over and over, long past the point where they could hear the question anymore. By focusing on what you will say, you make it less likely that you'll say that which you don't wish to. And that line, well, that whole little section stuck with me from the first time that I read these books, like 7 or 8 years ago. But also now thinking about it, it makes me wonder, like, where the fuck is he hearing this from? Did he hear it like he was the cause and that's what he heard? Or is it like his mentor gave him this advice and like Shade's passing it on? Like,
I just assumed it was a mentor thing. But
I would have loved to like learn more about Shade's mentor. I think that would have been so cool.
Me too. I'm very
we just need
interested.
more backstory books.
Yeah, definitely.
No.
We don't need anything like moving into the future. We need stuff looking into the past.
Give us more context.
I want like a rom-com about patience and chivalry.
Yes.
Like I want
So
other
fucking
genre books in this world and like backstory books and basically everything.
Yes. Well, speaking of backstory books, we do get a little bit at the intro of this chapter. It seems like it's a little bit of a butchered version of the Piebald Prince, because if you read the short story, I think it's a novella maybe, of the Piebald Prince, it is very different from how it's described here. Like things happen differently. The princess is very different. Like, and it kind of, if you read this section having the context of like what actually went down in the Piebald Prince, you kind of can see how stories and like legends get twisted with time, and also with like the prejudice of the times that you're living in, because the story is very different from what this little snippet legend actually says.
Yeah, I made a bookmark to come back and read this after we read Piebald Prince, because always meant to do that. I just assumed that it's like a more nuanced / less like the wicked are evil story, but like the actual execution of it is probably more interesting. Yeah.
It's really good. I liked it a lot.
I have it on my phone. I just haven't gotten there yet, but I just looked it up. It's like 100 pages, so I don't know if that's.
It's so small.
Okay, so it's
I think
perfect
it
for
is a
single
novella.
episode. Mhm.
But I think you two should read it, and then we can read it again, like in our little timeline later. So you guys will be reading it for the second time instead of the first.
Fair.
But I definitely recommend it. I like it. I think it was one of the better. Well, all of the stories are good, but I liked this short story because it gave more context, and it also kind of shows that the wit might be running in the royal family longer than just Fitz. Like Fitz might not have been the start of the wit being in the royal family. That's all I'm going to say.
Got you. Okay, one thing that really stuck out to me is I feel like I always missed or glossed over the fact that Will was on the white ship, and that's why he's been gone for most of this. Which I think also probably explains, because you had the question of like, how did Will get so good at the skill? I think it's probably because he was self-teaching himself through the skill scrolls. We see how like potent the skill scrolls are when like Shade picks them up in Tawny Man.
Yeah.
Or well, I guess Tawny Man and later into Fitz of the Fool. But yeah, I think it's probably just like, as the one negotiating that deal, had more access to the skill scrolls than the others and just used it.
Yeah. I feel like the way that he skills is so different from the way that we've seen it really ever else. And like also
It's
the
because
skill
the
kind of,
people who've seen strong in the skill are Verity, and
Yeah.
Verity is just like,
he like pummels you, but that's it. But I
Yeah.
think that like having the skill engulf Will and being like this kind of cloud that reaches out everywhere and is the first thing you kind of feel about Will first, it almost makes you think about the way that B feels Fitz's skill, and how it's like he's like just himself is just pouring out of his body everywhere, and that is way too much. Like I think that maybe Will and Fitz are a little bit similar in the skill that way.
Except Will's is like way more controlled.
And scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Will is definitely the most competent antagonist in this trilogy.
For sure.
Like the scene next book where he has Fitz where he Fitz is in the palace in Tradeford and he manipulates Fitz to walk straight to him. Crazy.
Even when he gets a hold on, in the next book, when he gets a hold on the Fool and no one can tell. And he has a hold on him for a long time. You would think that Fitz would be able to sense some type of whatever, but
Feels like I don't remember how Will dies at the end, but man, I feel like
I'm pretty sure he gets his leg bitten off by a stone dragon.
okay.
Something to
Oh
that.
shit.
I completely forgot that, but yeah.
Intense.
Something to that effect.
I don't know if we know a skill user as competent as Will in the series, do we?
Besides Kettle? No.
Yeah.
But Kettle's smarter, but she isn't able to actually use skill.
Which all of that is crazy to think because, again, there's 50 years worth of time in the next two trilogies, maybe even more. And in that time, no one has come close to Will. Or at least maybe they just haven't used it in the same way, but yeah.
Maybe Nettle. Maybe by the
That's what I was just
the
gonna
Fitz and
say.
the Fool, Nettle is, but Nettle isn't using her skill in a malicious way like Will is. I would see Nettle being able to do this
Nettle
stuff.
is definitely giving Will a run for his money. Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Nettle also, she's more focused on gathering the information so that she can pass it down. I think that Nettle would be the catalyst to create stronger skill users in the future. She's the start of all of it, and then it kind of opens up the doorway for them.
That makes sense, yeah.
Speaking of Will, maybe you guys already touched on this when I ran to the bathroom, but what does he have to do with the white ship? What am I missing?
Oh,
I
we were
missed
thinking
it, but
he's the go-between. He's the one who negotiated the skill scroll exchange.
Okay.
So
I
it's
was
sort of
yeah.
yeah. So the reason that so the reason he's been gone is because he's been on the white ship negotiating hey, I'll give you the skill scrolls and you give us all this cash we need to continue our lives.
Then why can no one but Fitz see the white ship, and why does the white ship make Fitz feel so terrified? And everybody feels so terrified. Is Will doing, making everybody feel terrified with skill when he's on the white ship?
I thought it was Keeble Rawbread, because we see Keeble earlier in this book. And it's just the white ship is just an instrument of the Pale Woman, and it's kind of the flagship of their fleet. And then that's why Will was going there to negotiate directly with them. This is all my assumption, but yeah.
I could kind of see Will being or at least spending a time on the white ship and having a turn using his skill on the white ship to scare people and everything like that. And I bet only the people who are trained in the skill or have they have an aptitude for the skill or something, they could be skilled if they were trained. They're the only ones who are able to see it because the white ship doesn't travel physically. It's just a skill tool or something.
That was how I interpreted it. It's not traveling, it's a projection almost.
Yeah, that's how I saw it too.
Yeah.
I thought that it traveled physically, and then that's where they have the skill stone, I thought. or like the. Yeah, I thought it was that like that it was there, but it's just like cloaked from everyone with the skill.
This
I
is
just thought they
why
brought
it confuses me so much. It's not clear. Like everybody can have a different interpretation. We never get like a definite answer about what it is.
I always just kind of assumed they brought all the prisoners to the ship because it's probably way too valuable for them to risk losing it. So they're not going to send the ship out to do all of this bidding. They're just going to summon everyone to it.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because the Forge ones aren't like just gone for a little bit and then brought back. They're like gone and then weeks later they're
Return.
forged. So it's like they took them somewhere. I always thought they took them to the ship where the stone is, but like Fitz can see the ship because it's kind of like skill projected there to make it, to kind of sow terror amongst the 6 duchies people. But yeah, we don't get a definitive answer, so the white ship drives me a little bit crazy.
Is this literally the last time the white ship is mentioned in this trilogy?
As far as I remember.
Because I didn't remember this mentioned at all. Maybe there's like one more in Assassin's Quest, but damn. I do not, because people are like, Assassin's Quest was a satisfying ending, and like, if I didn't have Tawny Man, I would be jumping off the walls, being like, "Are you kidding me? They set up all of this like white ship shit, and we never get to find out what's going on with that, huh?"
I feel like Fitz and the Fool is the only true ending because all of the other ones leave the door open for more. And Fitz and the Fool is like, this is the end. There's no more. Like, the story is finished. That's it.
Yeah, all the other ones leave questions. Like, it's over and a lot of things are answered, but there are still questions.
Enough questions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One part I liked about this chapter, well, like is a strong word, but I like when Night Eyes and Fitz are talking and he's like, he's not going to be able to focus because he has this porcupine quill in his nose. So he's like, go ask Heart of the Pack to take it out. And Night Eyes just doesn't want to.
He's like, can't you ask him for me?
Yeah, it reminds me of a kid. He's like, cannot you ask Heart of the Pack to do it for me? Cannot you ask him to help me? Like, it reminded me that
he repels at me. I don't like it.
Yeah, at this point, Night Eyes is really not that much more than a cub. Like, he's fully grown, but he's still young, and he's, like, nervous to ask Burrich for help. And it's like, Burrich would never not help him, even though he doesn't like what he's doing with Fitz. But, like, Night Eyes doesn't know that.
Still an animal who needs help, and Burrich will never turn his back on an animal who needs help.
Right. I thought that part was cute.
I know, Night Eyes is freaking adorable.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that, like, at one point that I thought the Burrich rant was, like, serious. Because, like, when he's like, I hated you, you've been a waste of my time and my life. The first time I read this, I was just like, oh my god, what?
Me too. And then when Night Eyes, like, echoes what Burrich said later, I felt so relieved. When he's like, Heart of the Pack says you should come with me now, tonight. Lie down, he says. Be a bone for the dogs to dig up later, he says. I remember being so relieved because I was like, oh my god, Burrich was giving him a message.
Yeah.
He wasn't really just telling him to die. Like,
I feel like we all should have known better. Like, Burrich loves this boy so much, but the first reading, we all believed Burrich at, like, face value and was like, fuck.
Because he's, like, super drunk, and, like, we know that Burrich hates the wit. So.
And that's kind of what he does to Fitz in Assassin's Apprentice. When he learns about Smithy, he's like, I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, he has the capacity to just, like, and Fitz thinks he hates him during that portion. So, yeah. So sad. But Birch does love Fitz.
Oh, for sure. That's his boy.
I know.
One thing that I was a little bit confused about is they spend so much time torturing Fitz, and then they let him keep Brondy's cloak. Like, why wouldn't, when they threw him back in the cell, why wouldn't they have just taken that from him and made it even more uncomfortable for him?
Probably because they thought he would like catch a chill and die without it.
I took it as it's like inconsequential to them. Like Regal knows he's going to get what he wants from Fitz. So it's like it's just a matter of time. So he doesn't even give the cloak a second thought.
I just always assumed that like Regal would do anything he could to make Fitz miserable, and taking that away should have been like the first thing that he did once Brondy left.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, we get two new characters introduced in this chapter. The first is Bolt, who kind of just gets like name dropped here quickly, but will show up again in Assassin's Quest, and is sort of like a lingering focal point for Fitz's trauma. And we also get the other character is Fitz's broken nose, who stays through the entire rest of the series.
I like that. That was good.
It becomes such a key feature for him. Like everyone that sees him mentions. And even like when Amber carves Paragon's face, everyone's like, why did you give him a broken nose? And Amber's like, his nose is perfect the way it is.
Mm-hmm. This
and then
is the
man talking with Jack, like nothing could ruin his face for me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have like any other notes, but like not to get into like specifics and stuff, but this chapter always stood out to me because I feel like in other pieces of media, torture is either like sensationalized, you have like grotesque, like weird instruments that they poke and prod you with, or there's sort of like the modern thing of like torture is just waterboarding kind of thing. And I feel like this chapter like completely recontextualizes it. Just like torture can be anything, but it's just pain, plain and simple, the inflicting of pain. Like, yeah, just getting your ass beat can be torture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually there's like some type of torture device or torture for a specific end of like asking questions. But they're just like beating the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And usually I feel like there's like this thing where it's like, oh yeah, getting the shit beat out of you is on like a lesser scale than like actual torture. And it's like, no, not really at all.
They broke nothing but his nose, but it's still the most pain he's ever been in his life.
And it's like pretty clear that one more session and he would have died.
Yeah.
Like he's on death's door.
He like might have even slipped into death for a minute too, because Night Eyes is like calling him back and is like, you were silent for so long, I had afraid you died and like didn't come to me first.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, I think we can just move on to chapter 32, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so chapter 32, Execution, basically continues what's been happening here. Fitz tries to pull a fast one on Regal and poison him with the poison intended for Wallace, but Will, meddler that he is, skills Fitz's intentions and instead takes the full blast of the poison to the face himself.
Mm-hmm. But Fitz also gets a wee bit.
He gets a little bit of it as a treat.
As a treat.
Yay.
And then finally Fitz is broken, beaten, something clicks, and he manages to leave his body behind and die and go with Night Eyes.
Yeah, he takes the poison that Burrich gives him, and he, like, there's a part right before where it's like, all of a sudden, instead of thinking about it as his body, he thinks about it as, like, it's like, its teeth rattled, and a seizure was coming on, big one this time. It's, like, obvious, like, that the body's gonna die.
But Fitz can live on.
Yep. At this point, Regal is fully in his paranoid narcissist era.
Yeah.
Did he ever leave his paranoid narcissist era?
Once he enters it, he never leaves it.
I'm pretty sure the only notes I had for this chapter were about the intro. And that's it.
There's a part, they're talking about Burrich in the intro, and they say his skill with beasts was near legendary even in his own lifetime. And I just thought that was curious because, like, it's not just, like, you know, usually they'll be like, oh, that person's really good with horses. But Burrich is, like, good with all animals, like hounds and horses and hawks. And, like, you wouldn't imagine someone good with dogs would be good with hawks, too, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, like, he wasn't kind of shadowed by a wit suspicion. Or maybe he was, and people were just kind of scared of his connection to the royal family or him in general, because he's kind of an intimidating force. So no one said
Probably
anything.
also, like, I assume he's probably vocal about his distaste for the wit, even outside of talking with Fitz. And so that probably also pulled some heat off of him.
I think also because he was so good with all the different animals and he didn't focus on one specific type of animal. Like if he focused solely on the horses or solely on the dogs, that would have drawn so much more suspicion. But since he's so good with every kind of animal, I think they kind of just assume that it's just he's like this really skilled animal guy, not he's witted.
That's true, because the stigma of the wit is so much of like it's a hound boy, or it's a, like, one specific type of animal.
Yeah.
And everyone who knew Burrich could not doubt that, like, he was just good at taking care of animals. So, like, it's not like any affection that the animal showed. It would be like, of course they love him. Look at him. He's grooming them and he's picking the bugs out of their coat or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of Burrich, they talk about his history, and in the intro it says, some say that his grandmother was of slave stock who had bought herself free from a Bingtown master by an extraordinary service. Am I the only one who was under the assumption that Bingtown didn't have slaves until everything with, like, Kyle in the Live Ship Traders trilogy went down?
No, because it's, like, pretty clearly specified in Live Ships that, like, slavery is not legal in Bingtown, but, like, people are starting to do it anyways. The new traders are kind of, like, bringing it in anyways. So it made me wonder if, because all of this in the intro is, like, the rumor of his backstory. So I was like, are the Six Duchies people just wrong and they don't know enough about, like, Bingtown? Or was slavery taking root in Bingtown a lot earlier than the old traders would like people to believe?
I feel like I always thought that Burrich was, like, his family came from, like, Chalist.
That's what I thought too.
So that's where she was a slave, because slavery is, like, just a thing that happens there, isn't it?
But I think it's in the next book where Burrich actually tells Fitz some of his history. And I think he does say that his grandmother was from Calist or Kelset or however you say it. So I think this is either Six Duchies people getting the rumor wrong or a plot hole.
I could definitely
It's
see it being
probably
either.
who's getting the rumor wrong because they do that a lot. They did that with
Well,
the
we
piebald
see-
prince.
Yeah, I was gonna say we see that literally in the intro for the last chapter, where the
Yeah.
piebald prince story is like butchered. So
But
I think
this
it's
feels like something that like Fitz would write, the intro. So I feel like it might just be
it
like
says
Hobb
some
mentally like grouping all of like the southern, or I forget if it's southern or northern, but grouping all of like that area together and then only thinking about the distinction later on.
Yeah.
I mean, it says some say his grandmother, so it's like he's passing on the rumor.
Mm.
Or saying, like, this is what people said about Burrich, because no
Yeah.
one really knew.
Fair.
Also, Alex has the blood plague note in your note. Because I wonder, because in Bingtown, it got there because it came, didn't it, like, come down the Rainwild River?
Mhm.
So I wonder if it, like,
Or I think it was like an assumption that Ephron made that it came from the Rain Wilds. I don't know if
Oh.
we ever get. Do we ever get like confirmation of that?
I don't know. I assumed if it was in the Six Duchies too, that maybe it kind of just, like, traveled down.
Did someone say that they lost like children to the blood plague, or was it like in the Six Duchies, or was it always just like Ephraim and
I know
Veronica
and Ephron lost, like, several children.
They lost their sons, I think. They had like
Right.
boys and they lost them.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some other reference to the blood plague in
Oh, no, that's what I
Farseer.
thought. Yeah,
like-
that's what I thought too.
Yeah, I just don't remember.
Me neither.
Because it could even be, I know that like somewhere it said that Shrewd had a daughter and she died in infancy, but that couldn't have been from the blood plague, right?
I don't know, because isn't it her and Constance both die?
Yeah, probably.
Childbirth, or was it sickness?
Wait, did Constance die during the blood plague? Maybe that's when they mentioned it.
That's what
Maybe.
we're wondering. We don't know.
If somebody's listening and knows better, can you let us know? Otherwise, we'll have to figure it out later on when we're actually reading it.
Yeah, this feels like a detail that is like one of those things where it's like it's fairly trivial to check, but then also like hard to just like Google.
Yeah,
You just have
definitely.
to like know where they talk about it. And there's definitely people with more encyclopedic knowledge of the books than us.
I could Google Queen Constance.
I love
Sometimes-
Googling stuff about the books and like hoping that you get stuff that's actually relevant to the books and not stuff that's like about random real world things.
Okay, I see a Reddit post. Click to see spoiler. Okay. In Assassin's Fate, apparently there's a part where it says Trude, his younger sister was, some say, the cause of her mother's death, for the birth was difficult and Queen Constance was never healthy after that.
God.
So she died giving birth to a daughter who did not survive.
Okay, wait. Now search up blood plague and see if there.
Yes. Blood plague and Six Duchies.
Yeah, blood plague, realm of the Elderlings. Yeah.
I wonder if there is like really a blood plague in real life.
It's probably just like. I would just be worried about like real world references to like the Black Plague, but then they're like, oh yes, they were coughing real bloody.
Yeah. Yuck.
But in the meantime, do we want to just start talking about chapter 33 here?
Definitely.
Okay, so chapter 33, Wolf Days. So this chapter is pretty straightforward. It is an accounting of Fitz in his time sharing a body with Night Eyes. eventually, though, Heart of the Pack calls Night Eyes back, and Fitz's soul is transplanted back into his body.
I love that when Birch does the calling, he never calls him back as Fitz. He always calls him back as Changer, because that feels like it's his true name. Like that is like his soul's name. So it makes so much more sense to call him back to that instead of like the body might be Fitz, but like the soul is Changer.
I also
Which is
think
also why I feel like Heart of the Pack is like Birch's like true name. I feel like just animals
That's
know
his
their
soul's
true
name.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I also think Fitz is at this point so traumatized that if he would have called him Fitz, they would have just ran away.
They would have been gone. You would have
Yeah.
seen them in Mountain Kingdom 20 years later.
Right. Yep. Birch calling Fitz Changer also makes me think that he was probably the one that gave him that name. Because how else would he know?
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I think that Hobb writes this chapter so fucking well because it's such a change from like the inner monologue that we've had from Fitz for the past 2 books. Like it is completely in the now. It's got like short sentences like this is what we did, here's what we're doing, There's no like thoughts behind what's going on. It's just like we're living our lives. Like it's just incredible. She's amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like we hear like from a third person perspective Fitz talk about like wolves only think in the now, but it's not until you have that first person perspective that's like, oh, they're like, I killed the deer, I ate the deer, there was some meat left over, I woke up, I ate some of the meat, and it's just like it's almost jarring their perception of time.
Mm-hmm. Because it seems like they were a wolf together so much longer than they probably were. Like when reading it, I was like, yeah, it's been like weeks that they're wolves together, but it's probably only been like it had to have only been a handful of days, otherwise Fitz's body would have been like uninhabitable.
Well, Fitz says, even I look back on my days as a wolf and I don't think of them as a matter of days. I think of them as like
A lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is you can start to like understand like, oh, that's why Night Eyes has so much trouble recalling specific events, because it's like the time scale or like perception of time is just all fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, this type of thing is why she's like genuinely my favorite author or writer, because
incredible.
It's seamless how much it like it's not an abrupt like jarring change, and where
it feels natural.
Right, like if it was like that as a reader, you'd kind of feel like this feels like a different book. But it's seamless, but it's so different that it's obvious that Fitz isn't Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Like she knows how to write the perspective of a wolf. Like this is just incredible.
And how it's our instead of we, and then all of a sudden, like Fitz speaks again, because Birch actually addresses Night Eyes and says, he's not yours. Night Eyes says, he's not yours either. And then all of a sudden, Fitz is like, then whose am I? And then it becomes the perspective is I instead of we. It's like they're
like
suddenly
snap out of his
broken apart
mentality.
Yeah, it's just like incredible how she writes that.
It's fucking frustrating to me because I'm like, how do I talk about or articulate this? Like, I'm just like, go read the chapter. It speaks for itself. Which,
it's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm frustrated because I'm like, I'm supposed to be talking about this. I'm supposed to have a podcast and have rereader insights, and all I can say is, chapter good.
Chapter good.
Me like.
One part that like broke my heart is when he's calling him back to try to like get closer, and like Night Eyes and Fitz don't want to. And as soon as they see the body, there's like, it says, there is a fear here, there is a danger, a threat of pain, of loneliness, of endings. It's like that's all he feels about his life is like 18 years of living.
It's like one of the guards says earlier. Can't imagine what nightmare could be worse than waking up for him.
Right.
And then even earlier than that, there's like when Fitz goes to like meet Burrich in the dark, he's like, "Is it a bad dream? If so, it's one I've been living for 18 years or whatever." And it's like, yeah.
And then it says, like, he's howling. It says, howl for the unfairness of it all.
That broke me.
Yeah. This chapter is really, like, the doozy.
I think this is top 3 chapters of the series. Top 5, at least.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, for writing and for, like, emotional...
impact.
Trauma.
Yes.
I didn't think it would get to me, but then Burrich like crying over his body.
Yeah.
Especially after thinking back of my first experience of reading it when I thought Burrich like hated him, and then coming to this part. Whew, I'm tearing up now a little bit just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like you've just like written out the whole quote here. Then suddenly he hugged me to him, his bearded face bristling against mine and his hot tears falling on my face. He rocked me back and forth, sitting in the snow at the edge of my grave. You're not dead, son. You're not dead. Oh, and he called him son!
I know, that really hit me. That really hit me in the feels.
Yeah, as I was like typing that out, it occurred to me that I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time we see Burrich cry. I don't remember him crying when Chivalry died, or when Vixen dies, or when he loses the stables.
He just goes down for those.
Yeah, he just gets like a black mood, and this is the first time we ever see him like crying, and he's crying because of what Fitz just went through. Like, it's so sad. It's like if like you've never seen your dad cry, and then all of a sudden something happens and you see them cry and you're like, oh my god.
Like, this is serious if he's crying.
Right. So, especially because Fitz like never really accepts the fact that Burrich loves him. But you see that like he's crying for you. It's so sad.
I know.
I'm gonna cry.
Let's move on.
Yeah, I guess one thing is the intro of this chapter is describing like a skill exercise for like finding, basically like meditating or finding oneness or whatever. And I found that interesting because it feels like it's another potential link between the skill and the wit, where it's like it's describing what Fitz did to like join up with Night Eyes, but then just in like a skill context or skill exercise context. So it feels like the idea of being open is something we see with both of them, and I think that this is trying to draw an explicit link there, where it's like, yeah, both of these things have this idea of like connection with the world and to what degree you open yourself up to it. So
it's also like interesting how Fitz has the opposite responses. Like you find out in the next book when he's talking to the old blood people that he's just been like yelling his wit out to the world.
Which is like so funny.
Yeah, so like he has trouble containing his wit, but then with the skill, at this point at least, he has trouble opening it up to like receive a message or communicate with somebody. He's like polar opposite reactions or natural responses to these two magics, even though they should like kind of function in a similar.
To be fair, when he does actually use the skill, he definitely like goes crazy with it in terms of like the ranges or like the range across which like he uses it. because like he's also like constantly worried about using it in Assassin's Quest because he's like, oh man, I do not know how much control I have over this, and Will could just swoop in at any time.
Right.
Well, I think as the books go on, the way that he uses both flip-flops, because
Yes.
at least in the Fitz and the Fool, not his wit anymore, really, but before that, his wit had become this like focused thing just to Night Eyes, so it was like a private conversation. And then in Fitz and the Fool, his skill kind of just like opens up and spills out of him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not a man of balance.
He never has been.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are we good to move to the epilogue and then wrap up our discussion of this book?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
I don't have any notes for the epilogue other than I'm sad.
Yeah. The book broke me, and Fitz began the book a broken man, and he ends it a broken man, which is like, why do you have to do this to us?
Right.
I mean, Fitz past, present, future, just all broken. Like narrator Fitz, broken. Fitz at the time of the story, broken. Fitz at the start of this book, broken. Fitz at the end of the last book, broken. Fitz just gets to have a little not broken in the middle as a treat.
He gets like buff and hot and awesome in the middle of this book. He's like, I'm Mr. Orman and I fight people and like I have a wolf and a girlfriend. And then
ignore the fact that my girlfriend is like, where are we going and what we're doing. I will simply not think of that.
I just cannot imagine finishing this book when it like first was published and having to wait for the next one to be written and published. I don't know how people did that.
Oh yeah.
Wreck.
See, this one I can understand it because I feel like there's like at least like a definite ending point, like stuff happens and I'd be like, oh man, that's so crazy. But like I could wait to read the next part. The end of Assassin's Quest is where like I was just like, that can't be it. You can't be, you're shitting me. And so like I think if I didn't have immediate access to Tawny Man, I would just never have read a Robin Hobb book again.
Wow. I think this one would have been worse for me just because it's like Fitz was a wolf and now he's not. Like, what is he doing? What's he got to deal with? And like, how? I need to read it all.
Right.
Okay, but can you imagine reading Assassin's Quest and then not know it, and thinking that's the end of the series and not knowing that there would be future books in the series ever? Like, can you imagine? Like, I would just...
The end of Assassin's Quest did not bother me the way it bothered a lot of people. I was like satisfied.
Yeah, I wasn't mad about it either. I'm like, this, okay, like this is what it is.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about it when we get
know that Tawny Man was coming, but like, could you imagine having, if you were unsatisfied with Assassin's Quest ending, and then having the next Robin Hobb book be out, and then not even about Fitz, it's like about these fucking talking ships and stuff, like...
Yeah,
that would be pushing people over the edge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You needed to write a note at the beginning, like, hold tight, Fitz is coming back soon.
Right.
Honestly. Guys, okay, I swear, I wasn't going to tell you guys, but Amber is the fool. Okay. It's out there.
She has to spoil it herself.
I know, I was trying to explain live ships to my mom. I was like, yeah, it's all different characters. She was like, are there any characters that are the same? And I was like,
I can't answer that. Just read.
One of them eventually has the face of a character you know. No, I will not elaborate.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess my last note was just the last line of this book, which is wolves have no kings.
Iconic.
Yeah, definitely.
We're done with Royal Assassin.
Thank fuck, because I can't. That was too much. Too much teen drama, too much torture, too much pain.
Too much
My heart's
responsibility.
really freaking bad. Yeah, I can't. I'm ready for the I almost said the live show.
Yeah.
When are we starting our live ship?
I mean, we do have plans to do that at some point, so.
We do.
But yeah, so thanks everyone for watching. I think this might be our longest episode yet. Let me see. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes, so definitely push
I
it.
think that it needed to be that long. We couldn't have broken it up.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone who has stuck through with this and listened to us ramble and be sad. We're going to be doing our traditional, I'm going to say traditional end of book live show as though we haven't had exactly one so far. It's going to be on Thursday, December 30th, probably 3 to 5 CST. But keep an eye on our social media, Instagram, Twitter, all
We'll
of that.
post this one.
Yeah,
beforehand.
we'll be posting the proper time before that. But yeah, and we'll also have a spoiler free section at the start, like last time. So if you want to get someone who you've just foisted the books on to come and say hi, for sure, do that. But yeah, unless you guys have anything else to say, cool. Then yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Starting off Assassin's Quest.
Yeah.
Till then, bye.
Bye.
Wolves have no kings, motherfuckers.